Hi, I'm Connor Svensson, founder and CEO of Web3 Labs. I'm here today to talk about how blockchain is great for records of ownership. When we talk about records of ownership, we're talking about ownership of a physical or digital asset. Typically, these assets are owned or managed by a company on behalf of an individual or another organization. And they can include things like it could be, property deeds, it could be share certificates. There's a whole myriad of different things that it could be. But if we think about, without blockchain, what the relationship looks like, if we have two different organizations, so we'll call them company A and company B, and company A wants to transfer some quantity of an asset that it owns to company B. Typically, what is entailed is that each of these organizations have got their own copies of their own data stores, which show, how much of each asset that they hold. And then when one company initiates a transfer, then the other needs to actually confirm that transfer back. And then, after this point, we see that both companies have their records in sync with one another, and this is achieved via reconciliation usually. When we bring a blockchain into the mix, it simplifies the process, because what we have is, instead of each organization having their own records associated with how much of each of these assets they actually have, the blockchain stores this information for them. So what it means is that each company is connected to this blockchain. So when company A wants to initiate a transfer to company B, it simply has to go via the blockchain and say, I'm transferring 100 of this asset A to the other organization, and both organizations can see that update being the blockchain. So the characteristics here are where we actually have a digital version of a physical or digital asset, as we said, but also that these assets need to actually be traded between different individuals, and that there's some sort of registry associated with them. There's lots and lots of different use cases where we can see these being used in industry. So in the ESG sector, or environmental sustainability and corporate governance, which is of course a very hot topic right now, specifically with emissions offsets. So you have companies that undertake different programs to offset emissions. So examples could be planting trees to reduce carbon offsets, because of course the trees absorb the CO2, and organizations will actually purchase those emissions offsets to reduce their overall carbon footprint. And so if we have those offsets being created as entities that live on a blockchain, then when an organization invests in those offsets, you have a chain of custody to see where they actually came from originally. We're also seeing it in programs that the World Bank is currently undertaking as well, with their climate metadata registry, which is where they link together multiple systems to see details of emissions offsets that are being created around the world and how they're being consumed by different companies and nations. There's a lot of people involved in commodity trades in terms of when the raw material is actually extracted by some sort of miner, all the way through to going in transit to the end buyers of that. There's a number of different entities that are involved in that, and it's a very manual and paperwork heavy transaction. By representing these raw materials in a blockchain format, they can be traced through that supply chain, but then also as they are traded among different organizations. So you have a digital version of this physical commodity asset. We also see it in traditional supply chain in the form of, say, coffee bean provenance. So Starbucks, they actually have the facilities now to trace where coffee beans are being grown, which farmers are actually harvesting them, and then tracking them all the way through to when they're ground up to make a cup of coffee for a consumer. And they have an app that consumers can use to trace where their coffee beans throughout its life. And then in the finance space as well, there's lots of other opportunities there. So one of them is interbank settlement. One company very involved in this is Finality. So where you have different banks where they make payments to one another. This is something that's happening all the time within the modern financial system. And there's a lot of records that need to be reconciled, because when one bank sends funds to another bank, and they need to be able to both be sure that each side received that. And then there's a lot of reconciliations of data that take place to ensure that their balance sheet supporting these transfers that have happened are all up to date, because of course they have to ensure that these records are all accurate. We're also seeing it a lot as well in what are called central bank digital currencies. So for example, the Bank of England right now, they're very interested in partnering with organizations who can look at the opportunities to create digital currencies here in the UK market. And then as well in land registries too, with title deeds for properties. These title deeds can exist on a distributed ledger or blockchain, and with that you have the ability to track ownership of them, but also the title transactions are quite complex. There's a lot of people involved in it, so having this information on a blockchain simplifies it because there is a single source of truth to refer back to. And this is something that we've seen the UK Land Registry as well as multiple land registries in other jurisdictions make progress with as well. So just to recap, records of ownership, they're a very, very good use case for blockchain. So the key things to bear in mind here are that where you have a digital version or of an asset that needs to be traded and there's some sort of notion of ownership with it, you've got something where blockchain could help significantly. If you'd like to learn more, do check out the other videos in this series, and also sign up for one of our upcoming Principles of Successful Blockchain Deployments, where I'll go deeper into all of this. Thank you.